Hello, people. What's up? This is a Seattle Seahawks podcast where we're going to react to the Seattle Seahawks losing at home once more to the Minnesota Vikings, this time in week 16 of the NFL season, falling to. They're still above 500, but 8-7 on the whole schedule, and their playoff hopes are on a knife's edge. A knife edge? It should be a knife's edge, shouldn't it? And things aren't looking good. But first, please do like the video. We already have some likes. Thank you for that. Caffeine is slowly making its way through my bloodstream, into my bloodstream. Please let me know if my audio is okay. I'm back in the usual setup. Much appreciated on the last video that we did. And keep the questions coming. I've started some questions. And Griff, I have a good preamble topic.
Okay.
How would you say this word that I'm putting into the chat here?
So chat, to give a little preview, this is my prediction. I think we're going to have a long vowel versus short vowel discrepancy here.
You're so clever.
I would say divisive. What would you say, Matty?
Oh, you'd say divisive?
Divisive.
Oh, perfect. So would I.
Really?
Yeah.
So we're not going to be divisive over this topic? Because some people say divisive.
Yeah, but like I was watching an American whiskey YouTuber, and they were saying divisive. Or they might have been Canadian.
Interesting. Okay.
Would Canadians do that? Oh, that's good. Well, that wasn't very divisive at all.
If you're gonna say divisive, then you also need to say like decisive when saying decisive. And well, not necessarily because there's an E versus an I on the first syllable, but no, I've heard people say divisive before, and I guess that makes sense. Divisible, if that's what they're thinking, but the root word is divide, so why would it be divisive?
Exactly.
That's very interesting.
Oh, David's saying it might be my people.
Maddie, are you drinking anything right now?
I wish. I was going to have a Bunnahabhain cask strength, but instead I have a double espresso.
Nice.
Same. What are you drinking? The way you asked that question, it was kind of like, I know you're sincere. You obviously care what I'm drinking, but the way you want to tell us what you're drinking, go on, tell us.
I'm setting up a bit, okay? I'm drinking some coffee, all right? Because I've got tomorrow off, even though I have to wake up early, so it's kind of.
Oh, you want me to say coffee?
But you know how the saying goes: caffeine in one hand, confidence in the other.
Nice. That was a risk you took there, because if someone had messaged you at that moment, all of chat would have seen that you are actually friends with Matt Damon.
I thought you were going to say Ewan McGregor.
No. Chat knows that.
Anyway, whatever.
It's late and that you're late for the podcast when I start getting the sniffles. I feel like at 2:30 a.m. if we haven't started the podcast and I haven't had my coffee, I start sniffing. I don't know why.
Is that a withdrawal?
Maybe, or it could... From what? It could also be my brain saying, hey, time for bed. You're not breathing properly. I don't know.
That's very interesting.
It's completely circumstantial.
Anyway. Nice hat.
Thanks, man. Hey, wouldn't it be funny if the Sonics came back and then they were like a super team and they just were great instantly and they just won everything and it was like a dynasty?
Yeah, that would be great.
Or dynasty, as I'd say.
That would be great. Key Arena would be popping.
Be rocking. Everyone would forget about the other silly Seattle sports teams.
Right.
Such as the Mariners,
or the
Kraken.
Or even the Storm, the Suckers.
Yep.
Or even
the Seawolves.
The Seawolves. Huskies. There's more. The Thunderbirds.
R.I.P. Right? Or they still think?
Everett Silvertips. Yeah. Or even the Seahawks, I guess, which after all, this is a Seahawks podcast. Matty, hit it.
Welcome to the Seattle Overload podcast, where the Seattle Seahawks have fallen to 8-7 on the season, and though they still have a winning record, this was a damaging loss for their playoff hopes and their future in this 2024 season. They are now reliant, I believe, on the Los Angeles Rams losing next week against the Arizona Cardinals. That's not impossible, given the Rams did have their most difficulties this season against the Cardinals in the first time those sides played each other, but it's looking unlikely, and of course the Seahawks then have to travel to Los Angeles to play the Rams in Week 18, where the season may be done in terms of everything. It may be purely academic, and this was a very disappointing loss against Minnesota because in many ways it felt like the game was there for the taking. It certainly felt like that in the first half. And then in the second half, they kind of had numerous opportunities to win it, and they didn't seize those. And against a good team like Minnesota, who's now won 8 games in a row, that sucks. It also sucks that the Seahawks went 3-6 at home this season, which for people who pay the prices that they do to attend those games is abysmal. Driff, where do you want to start with this? I mean, maybe we do what we usually do, where we talk about what does this mean for the Seahawks moving forward, even though I've kind of recapped that quite succinctly.
You were really succinct, actually.
Wow.
More succinct than I would have been, because I'm bad at that. It definitely puts them in the hole for this season, and they're no longer the writers of their own script anymore. I was going to say they're no longer in control of their own destiny, but I wanted to switch it up, so I switched it up.
Yeah, that was smooth.
Thank you. Was it succinct?
No.
Well, I'll work on that. But yeah, there is, if I'm not saying you should, because don't give up on the season, but if you kind of let yourself emotionally kind of give up on this season, the upshot of this game is it's kind of an interesting signal of what they're capable of, but then also like it really hammers home what needs to be fixed for them to improve for next season's sake. They played a really good offense and a really good defense. I think Darnold had about an average game. And
I thought he was pretty meh.
Yeah, like statistically anyway, the Vikings' output was average this game, which for an average game for them, I mean, of their 12, 13 games, 14 games, 15 games they've played, which, this to me is a little bit of a rebound from the Packers game. Their run defense was a lot better. Pass defense wise, I mean, look, Riq Woolen and Witherspoon, Joe Brown, like they all got worked a little bit, like just enough for it to add up in the aggregate. And you're playing the best pass catching core in the NFL. So look, that's always going to be variance. They've won some of those games this year, and they've lost some of those games this year against that cornerback receiver type of scenario. So you got to live with it. Like that's football. Ultimately, and then offensively, we could talk about that. But like the offense in general, I think if you take in their pass and rushing, I think they put up the 5th most efficient game against the Vikings defense. That's with some OC concerns. That's with one of the worst offensive lines in the league. So ultimately, they dropped a home game. They lost by 3 points to one of the best teams in the NFL this year. Like there is some things to take stock of here. So that's kind of where I'm at. Obviously, we'll unpack this game and how frustrating some of it was, but it's not like some abysmal game. Like honestly, as someone who has kind of detached from caring about how this season ends, I'm kind of okay with how today went.
Huh. Yeah, I guess for me, I was expecting worse offense, and we got signs of promise on offense that I possibly didn't expect, but ultimately, if anything, the end result is I'm more disappointed because the defense had opportunities to take the ball away, and that's something Mike Macdonald fixated on, and they did not take those opportunities. I can also hear myself, Griff, occasionally, and I don't know if that's
Yeah,
you.
I'll turn it down.
It's very annoying. Listener, I don't know how you put up with my voice, but yeah, they got closer than I thought they may have in this game, and the fact also that really they should have won, I think that's an encouraging sign. But right now it's frustrating. And then moving forward, I think this is probably the game that gets Ryan Grubb. If there's a final nail in a coffin, a metaphorical coffin, this is probably the game where Ryan Grubb is done, because not for the first time we saw an offensive approach that had differences, like new stuff in it, in that there was under center where they dropped back without play action, and they debuted that on the first drive, and there was they ran 4 verts from under center and dropped back and hit I think it was AJ Barner on the seam ball. Feels so long ago right now, but there was a new wrinkle. There was elements of balance to the offense, but then also it was all underpinned by crazy kind of passing in a very close game this time. There wasn't really the excuse that you're down 2 scores to start off with. The pass rate was nuts. We can get into why that was. This was all while Geno was dealing with his sore knee issue and was visibly struggling and looked to re-aggravate that during the game. And yeah, they ultimately, the offense didn't get it done. We'll talk about Geno Smith's performance. We'll talk about receiver performance as well. But I think the Grubb, particularly in the second half, again, not for the first time, the way that developed and his calling developed after the initial, okay, this is interesting, what's the wrinkles going to be, was insane. Like, I actually could not believe what I was seeing. So, Griff, I don't know what your thoughts are on the offense here, but...
Yeah, well, so Grubb kind of roped me in the first half. Well, once again, though, I think it's where he comes up within his existing structure, which he won't really change, as in like percentages of, how many snaps am I going to spend in X formation versus Y versus Z, and then the pass rates therein, right? He's not changing that, but within that framework, he'll have some games where he shows some life of mixing up those, formation tells that we've talked about, throwing counters off of the same look or coming up with a new design, which is really interesting, like a new design series. Like, I'm going to do like an ABCD progression off of this particular look, and it will work, and it will serve as like this tactical boost, but then it runs out. And then what do you lean back on? You just revert to what you already were before then. And so he ropes me in, and I'm like, oh, okay, is he kind of figuring something out? But it's almost like he's it's like loading up a cannon and firing your shot, but then like that's all you got. Like, okay, that was cool, that was a neat trick that you pulled out of your sleeve, and what's left? It's again, like, he'll introduce these tactical like wrinkles, evolutions, and then the grand strategy ultimately kind of sinks the offense or prevents the offense from reaching its ceiling. So ultimately, the second half of the game was the same story for the whole season. It's just not a balanced offense, and that's really what it comes down to.
Well,
that said, go ahead.
No, keep going. That said,
well, the problem with the offense is, I mean, the turnovers are bad, and even no matter how you split up blame, Geno, the receivers, whatever, the protection, even if you don't play that game well where you say, well, it wouldn't have been a turnover if X, Y, and Z. Even if you accept the turnovers are still like the fourth or fifth biggest problem on the offense. The offense isn't as good as it could be. Like, so if you statistically, like literally, if you statistically account for all the turnovers and you stabilize all the turnovers for the teams across the league, they're like 20th in EPA right now. They only jump up to like 18th. Like the turnovers, I'm not saying anyone is saying it's just the turnovers, but I'm saying the reason why this offense is frustrating and at times sucks is because they can't run the ball. They don't have a play action game and they can't get explosive in the open field. That's the problem. And if you fix those, that will also down the road also clean up some of the turnovers as well.
Someone would look at, I think with the can't run the ball, it's more also that they won't run the ball. Like if you look at Walker had a few goal line carries, if I recall correctly, but just raw numbers, Walker averaged 3.9 yards per carry and Kenny McIntosh had 4.7 yards per carry. The pair of them had 11 carries in this game to Geno Smith's 43 dropbacks. And there's more advanced stuff, but ultimately, again in a close game, Grubb has decided to go very drop back heavy with the context of Geno's injury. And if you look at the drives, and this is again hazy recollection, may focus our tape if we have time to do a tape this week, given it is Christmas. We may focus some tape on the offense because it's an interesting exercise. But like the touchdown drive was like where they had that balance of the, under center concepts, a bit of shotgun quick game, which is something we've praised in recent weeks. Then they punt where they went pure gun, drop back, and it was pretty obvious gun as well. They're also backed up, which obviously doesn't help. The pick is, and we'll talk more about Geno, but the pick is from a play calling standpoint, because we're talking Grubb here. It is again under center, play action. It's the first play of the drive. The previous drive they'd spent all in gun, so it's not like it works exactly like this, but it's very kind of, well, that didn't work, so let's go back to the under center thing again. Oh, we haven't called a play action yet. Let's reap the rewards of that. But again, they fake the play weak. The mesh is weak with the running back, which is something you picked up on very early, Griff, and obviously NFL defensive coordinators are almost as smart as you and will have noticed it too. And they don't run weak. So lo and behold, the linebackers, the safeties, everyone is sunk way underneath the roots. There's nothing open on the play.
Right.
So it's not an effective play action play. The next drive, and this is all first half stuff where it felt better, but they go 3 and out. And I believe that was where it went back to doing the shotgun stuff again. Then they put together a touchdown drive at the end of the half, which once more comes in a no-huddle, up-tempo situation. And they choose to start the second half, with another up-tempo, sort of no-huddle style drive, which ends in a field goal. Then they punt. Then they punt after a fairly long drive, but which had the fake punt involved in it as well. Then the touchdown drive, which again was like the best drive, I think.
Yeah, certainly. Well,
it was pretty good in the Grubb blended in multiple tight ends. There was shotgun running for the first time in ages. Like it felt like they hadn't even run the ball or tried to run the ball. They went so drop back heavy. Multiple tight ends. And a sprinkling of tempo, and also Geno played out of his mind on that drive. And then they missed the 60-yard field goal, and then the pick to end the game. But
yeah, and there were a lot of the here and there plays that added up to making them lose by 3. Right? You've got Geno's interception where you gift the Vikings 3 points. You've got the field goal, or excuse me, the sack that leads to the elongated field goal try. In my mind, like there was nowhere to go with the ball, and that hit so quick. I mean, sure, could Geno have thrown it away? Yeah, he could have, but that right there, what I take away from that is, man, this O-line sucks. Geno only got sacked 2 times today under quite a bit of pressure. I think that's a credit to Geno, but I also think that's a credit to Grubb for having a protection plan for Flores's blitz scheme, pressure scheme. A lot of the 4 strong, like you did mention quick game, right? They had outlets in mind. I think that's smart.
And Griff also, along with the 4 strong stuff and what you're mentioning there, but having, particularly on the, it's very easy to see, results were good, so the process must have been, but it really did feel like that, and there was obviously some confirmation bias going on here, but having enough variation of, okay, this is a different tendency now, it's under center drop back, or okay, we're getting into our 4 strong, but that variety to obfuscate tendency and keep a defense a bit more honest from teeing off, just totally teeing off. Like, for instance, the broadcast read out, Lau Mayer was having a good game quite early on. So, part of the reason he's having a better game than last week is at that point in the game, he wasn't being asked to drop back in a clear shotgun screaming pass situation in one-on-one with a 3-tech. He was asked to do it maybe once by that point in the game rather than, 5 times. That is anecdotal, but you get my point. Anyway, sorry, Griff, to interject there.
No, I agree that that's a good point. So.
Yeah, the 4 strong stuff you were saying, and just the.
I do think it was interesting that he didn't have a lot of hot answers over the middle, because I think they were really worried about sim pressures and guys dropping underneath, so that their answer was just dump the ball out into the flat. I think that was a good ethos for this game. I would say it worked.
It did, yeah.
They had collectively again, they had a really good performance against the Vikings, accounting for who they played. Like the 5th best. Put the other way, it was the Vikings' 5th worst defensive day of the year. So again, nothing insane. Like, we're not saying it was the best performance, but it was pretty solid, all things considered. And again, the Seahawks did that with probably one of the worst offensive lines Minnesota has faced all year. So,
yeah, right. So, but in terms of Grubb and the future, Griff, it's looking fairly bleak, right? Like, there's no way. Yeah. And it also, a lot of what Grubb's doing, it comes off as though that's what has been sort of the emphasis from above, like Macdonald in the week, like the opening salvo. For instance, the first example in my mind is always going to be that 49ers game where we hadn't really seen under center on the season. And then for the first few drives, they're pure, it's like watching a totally different offense. So pure under center, trying to get bootleg and play action going, and it's like, what is this? This is foreign. Like, where did this come from? And it felt like in the bye week as well, when the run rates were increased, and they're trying to run the ball a lot more. That was the a bit of perhaps head coach overseeing, you could say. But lo and behold, the run rates now have dipped again. They're passing a lot, and I don't know the exact numbers from this past game. And after their opening salvos of a bit of under center variety, it did revert again. And just conceptual variety, it did revert again. And yeah, so Grubb is probably done.
Yeah. The offense needs to be better than this. So how do you make the offense? It's not like you'd be firing him to punish him. It's you need to improve the offense. So how do you do that?
Well,
I don't think Grubb wants to coach in a different broad structure, really. So he's not going to, change. He wants to do what he wants to do, which makes sense. So he needs to go to a team where that makes sense to scheme that way. So I imagine he probably wants to go back to college himself. It might end up be a quote unquote mutual parting of ways,
Figuring out mediocrity said John praised Grubb for his time of possession and ball control approach to offense. Whoops. Yeah, Schneider, we believe, and obviously he said himself, was responsible for the Grubb hire. And it's not like all of the comments made, including about being physical on offense as well, they haven't aged too well.
You know what I want to say though?
Yeah.
While that's true, John spearheaded that because I don't think Mike was really able to be part of that conversation
Yes.
because of the timing of everything.
Yes.
Do we necessarily, and this might be rhetorical, do we necessarily know that Grubb was John's first choice even? What if he was
No,
his
of
second,
course.
third?
No, of course we don't. Yeah, I'm sure.
What,
I'm
what,
sure
what if
there
he
was
was
multiple
his
options.
what if he was his second, third, or fourth choice? What if there was another name
Yep.
or two that he really wanted?
Yep. So the other thing when you look at how to improve an offense, Griff, is the quarterback position. And that may seem crazy when you just read the first part of the box score, which is Geno completing 31 of 43 passes for 314 yards and 3 passing touchdowns. But when you look at the 2 picks and the moments that they happened in, it was actually a massive stop for the defense to get the stop when they did, given that they were down 14-7, and to hold the Vikings to a field goal and make it only 17-7 was big. But that first Geno pick, Griff, was not good enough. Like, everyone was covered up. He tried to get it to Fan, I think, and give him a chance to go get the ball. Was he hit? Was his arm in? Was the throw tipped or something?
On the interception to Fan?
Yeah.
No.
Or was Geno
He
hit?
he was
It's
rolling out.
just a bad.
So there's another play in the game where it's a very similar situation, and JSN bends way down and comes to the
Yeah,
ball.
comes back to the ball. Yeah.
That's what Geno is assuming Fan is going to do.
Yeah.
Look, I'm going to put that interception on Geno, but
Yeah.
that is what he's thinking Fan's going to do. That's his thought process. I'm not saying I'm
Yeah.
not excusing it. I'm just saying, well, that's what he's thinking. Clearly, they need to work that out. Geno probably just needs to give up more on this offense. He refuses to give up. To me, the core issue is that the structure of the offense is failing itself. I'm not even saying he's failing Geno. The structure of the offense is failing the offense. The quarterback, in my mind, makes up for more than he contributes to negatively, given what the structure of the offense does provide. Like, he makes the structure look better than it is. So anyway.
Yes. So then, Griff, the second interception, where I actually thought Mark Sanchez, I think, is really underrated as an announcer. That's a bit of a tongue twister. But he, again, in this game, did a great job of, I think, of explaining football and talking football and not getting into certain narratives, like actually having takes which seemed well reasoned and like he actually watches the sport and prepares. Anyway, I thought he did a great job explaining the pick from DK, where I don't really think you can put that on Geno. I think that's a timing route where DK, for whatever reason, either he was tired, but I think I agree with what you were saying before, where DK kind of thought that was man-to-man, two-man, and bent it to the high corner. Geno thought he was breaking out flatter, and that's how the pick happens.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% that interception that has nothing to do with Geno. So Orlovsky said that, and I liked his take. Technically, given the coverage, and if you're converting the route, Metcalf should have broken outward at a 90-degree angle instead of the 45 that he takes. But then I also like that he offered a sympathetic view for DK because the coverage was disguised so well that it's understandable that he might have misread it. And then he puts a bow tie on it and says, if the pressure wasn't coming so quickly, Geno might have been able to wait a tick longer to see what DK was really doing and could have accounted for DK not running the right route, maybe thrown it away. And that would have been ideal. So it's technically a DK, but if assuming our assumptions are right? Like, we're not just going to operate like we know 100%, but I think it's obvious personally. It's technically a DK, but like, you don't need to kill him for it. It just kind of sucks. The Vikings are really good.
And interestingly, Mike Macdonald after the game was asked by Mike Dugar of The Athletic whether that was a miscommunication, and Macdonald said no, he didn't think so. He knows the route. So that will be interesting to hear what Macdonald says. He said he needed to watch the tape, but I see that the same as Orlovsky, obviously, and you. Geno in the rest of this game, Griff, I thought there was some absolutely spectacular stuff. I just wish that the fan play hadn't happened. But I
Dude,
think no, I'm concerned, given what we heard right in this past off season about jersey sales of star quarterbacks and stuff like that. I am worried about how this offense struggling this year and Geno's like raw numbers, which the interception total looks bad. I'm super worried how all of this is going to be interpreted and the decision that the Seahawks make at the quarterback position. Ultimately, of course, I don't think any quarterback really would look better in this offense than Geno has this season, which is that's how highly I think of his game and his performances in general. I think the stress these plays creeping in is the stress of being in a pocket, and that play, the first pick wasn't, the pocket was fine, but it's a poor play action concept. We spoke about it, but it's a poor play action concept that is not balanced with your run game. There's not a tying in or layering of your calls, and that is partly what the quarterback has to contend with too. But yeah, I'm afraid about the decision made by the higher ups when it comes to the quarterback position, given some context and rumblings. But
what you mean, like the results aren't satisfactory and they identify the wrong underlying reasons for it?
Well, and maybe they're motivated by perceived like financial gains.
They're
jersey sales.
They're driven by SEO optimization. No, that's redundant. SEO, because that's search engine optimization. I just said search engine optimization. Wow.
Yeah, well, that's actually what they're missing out on. You have to optimize the optimization.
That's right. God forbid you don't optimize optimally your optimization, Matty.
Yeah, come on. How would you assess the rest of this Geno game? Do you want to take it further?
Yeah, I think so. Look, there's all these words you can throw out to describe a player's performance. Things like great, very good, good, average, above average, below average, bad, very bad, horrible, right? All those words. What was
Trash.
that? 9 of them. But that's synonymous, though. That would be redundant, Matty.
Oh.
I think he played a good game. Not very good, not average. I think he was good. And it ties into like his performance. I think he was the third best, both in EPA and success rate against the Vikings defense this season. So putting that into context, and again, with the bad O-line, again, with not a play action game to lean on, with not a run game to lean on, those are hard circumstances to do that against. The interception to Fant was bad. Had he not made that interception, I might have said he played a very good game. Had he not taken that sack, which again, that's 80% O-line, 20% Geno. Had he not done that and not thrown that one pick, I would have said he had a very good game. We talked about the DK pick. There are some other throws that could have gotten intercepted that didn't. I think those are circumstantial. The one to Cashman that he dropped, that ball was tipped at the line of scrimmage. Yeah. Should he have maybe arced the pass more? Maybe. But the one that Shaquille Griffin dropped, I mean, look, DK screws up again on that one. I think DK did not have a bad game. I thought some squirrely things happened.
Okay, we'll talk about DK,
but I'm not trying to pile on DK here, but I'm just saying, like,
yeah.
But then also you can talk about like the nature of the offense kind of forcing them to live in those things that much.
It should never be that high leverage a spot in that and too many of those,
If you're gonna throw a fade like outside the 30, like at least make it so that the timing of the route goes into the end zone.
Yeah.
Because I would rather them have 4 chances at the 20-yard line to throw a touchdown into the end zone than get 15 yards and then have to find a way to finish off the final 5, because they're actually there. Look, even though they have red zone woes, this is not a bad offense in the 30 to 12-yard range. They're actually pretty good there. It's inside the 12 is when their stats utterly free fall. Like that's where you can cut it up, is to that stretch. Like the second you get into, I know I'm going off on a tangent. The second you hit the 20-yard line, keep trying to throw a touchdown until it's time to kick a field goal. Like that's my opinion. Forget about a first down.
So
at the 20-yard line, throw a touchdown.
So on the sack Geno took, you're talking about the one which essentially put them in the 60-yard field goal range.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So 1st and 10, sacked for a loss of 6 yards. What surprised me about that drive, right, is with just under 4 minutes left, all 3 of their timeouts, needing a field goal, and I think it spoke to. Again, it kind of reminds me of Grubb feeling like he doesn't have the the additional plays off his stuff, that he's maybe the new stuff or the maybe less familiar stuff that he trots out. But it's like the drive after you've had a touchdown drive where you've showed like beautiful balance and blending and there's a mixture, and they just go like into pure like no huddle up tempo mode. And Geno's making some really 2 back-to-back impressive throws, and then marching. But you get into like a pure like pass mode,
Right.
and pure shotgun mode, and it's like there's no real need in the game to do that. I understand the temptation, and then on the sack he actually took, I don't know if anyone was really open. I want to see that, but we had a question from Jason saying, were Geno's sacks? He was sacked twice today. His fault or the result of no one being open? Seemed to be a lot of the latter. And then figuring out mediocrity said 2 of the replay angles showed very little open downfield, if that, which I concur.
Yeah.
And that's always the thing. I actually thought the offensive line was okay today, but it was more. There was a couple of running back reps in pass pro, which is always tough, and then it was more guys, not the timing of the play, Geno having to hold it, then the pressure, the pocket can't last forever, that type of stuff.
Yeah. Another thing, I agree with you. The O-line wasn't that bad, even though I keep saying, with this O-line, whatever. I think that's kind of part of the reason why I didn't look that bad was, again, the focus of getting the ball out in the right spots and being decisive and going downfield. It wasn't a lot of patting the ball and then firing downfield. It was being pretty decisive. That's credit to the receivers, Grubb, Geno, like all a feedback loop there. Like they all are contributing. Go ahead.
No.
Oh.
That was a good point. I didn't know if you'd finished. Sorry.
Yeah, it was a really good point.
Yeah.
I was going to say something else, but then I forgot what it was.
Oh. Brilliant.
I think I just liked how Geno just keeps punching. Look, I mean, the Vikings defense is tough. It's hard to attack them downfield for real, and they did hit some explosives this game, or were going for. I think some of the benders he threw to JSN down the middle of the field were really good. Some of those inbreakers, those weak side inbreakers to DK, that was pretty impressive. Like he's going for it, man. Like he really gives his receivers chances to like be special. And like the one dig route that got knocked down, like he's throwing it where he should throw it. It's DK against Trail, 2-man Trail. He's like, win on your route, man, and I'll put it there for you. Really good defense by the corner, frankly.
Yeah. And that's partly why people who like us who watch Geno, he plays quarterback in a way that is very logical to us sat at home watching the tape for what we know, because he's giving his guys a chance. He's slinging it. Like he's not turning down the opportunities that present themselves in the game, very rarely. And it's a beautiful thing to watch. And also, if he had a bit better pass protection, and I'd argue better pass protection comes with this second point. If he had better overall, formational balance along with just play type balance, then there'd be less bad and there'd be results that would be and better results. So it is. I really hope this isn't a big what if. It does feel like a wasted year for this offense.
Definitely wasted. Even accounting for the O-line, they are so much worse than they need to be. That's the bottom line.
This is why I don't like saying the offensive line is really poor. I think because I've seen like terrible Seahawks offensive lines put together good overall results.
Last year,
or not terrible. They clearly weren't terrible, but like they were struggling in certain aspects of their game. But just because an O-line can't drop back 43 times from shotgun in clear like pass situations doesn't make them a bad O-line. I don't think any offensive line can do that, by the way. Like 2019's offensive line, if you look at it, sure, they have a good few pieces, but that was a pretty damn good offense. And 2020, the first half, that I know it fell apart, but again, the offensive line didn't look great, did it?
Right. I mean, last year, again, 10th in EPA, 12th in DVOA. What were they? 12th in points per drive.
And the offensive line was so poor that John Schneider decided to revamp the entire interior three.
Right. So what stopped them from being better than what they were to me last year was the O-line. So they've got two things working against this. What's stopping this offense with Geno, who we think is a really good quarterback in the receiving group, from being elite is it's two-pronged. It's the play calling and it's the O-line. If last year the O-line is what put them from being around the 5th or 6th best offenses instead of the 10th to 11th or 12th, this year it's that and the play calling that's dropped them down to around 20th. Like, this is not a horrible offense. It's a below average one. Like, this is what exactly below average feels like. That's what it tastes like. This is what that looks like. So it's, if Grubb did as good of a job as the last staff, and again, maybe it's not all Waldron, maybe it was other people involved with the offense, we'd still only be talking about them being 10th and probably not likely being able to be better than that. So you can come at it from both sides. It's the O-line and it's the OC. Like, it doesn't have to be one or the other.
And a good OC should scheme around their players and scheme for their players and scheme to their strengths and adapt to those strengths throughout a season. And I'm not saying Grubb hasn't done that. He obviously has his bit, but that was the hope with Ohio after what he did with the Washington Huskies, that, he really dialed into the strengths of that skill, those players and their skill sets, and he kind of maximized that to the fullest. But this year we've not seen that. Maybe you could argue that the opening strategy was, hey, Geno's a heck of a drop back passer. Let's build that. We can do similar things and even more than we did with Michael Penix. There's certainly an element of that. Right.
You know what's funny about the way the offense is constructed is, like, still, what is the subtext behind it? It's Grubb being obsessed with Geno, being like,
Geno, like, just thinking this guy's like the shit, and he is the shit, but unfortunately, it's not a realistic.
He's running like 3 times the amount of 7-step drop back with Geno with this offensive line than he did at UW with all of the talent at his disposal, including the quarterback Penix, who was really freaking good, than he did at UW. Like, what does that tell you? Like, look, Grubb, we're criticizing Grubb, right? But he knows football still. He knows quarterbacks. He's literally punching through the screen and grabbing Seahawks fans by the neck and saying, my quarterback is really freaking good. That's why I'm scheming this way. It's the supervillain from a sci-fi show discovering technology that's really cool, but then overusing it. And the minions are like, but sir, it'll blow up if we keep using it. And he's like, no, keep going. And then
do you remember though?
Still, he knows his quarterback is really good.
Right. Do you remember after, was it when did they play the Patriots? Was that week 2? Or 3?
That was week 2. Broncos, Patriots.
We said, well, I might have said it, but I think you agreed. We said there'll be diminishing returns to this. This is not going to be sustainable. They need to start I'm really excited to see. We're really excited to see what
Yeah.
the wrinkles are. And when did we start talking about, or when did I start talking about the chocolate cake?
I think that was week. I think that was week 2. Yeah, it was
The
week 2.
man bloody loves chocolate cake. He
He
can't.
loves some chocolate cake.
But that was kind of ripping off what you were saying, I think, in week 1, which is where are the doubles?
Where the doubles? Oh, it's all the same shit. We're all saying the same thing. Like, yeah,
People who
man.
are just tuning in for the first time have no idea what we mean here.
Look, even to contrast, like with Sam Darnold, Darnold's having a great year. To put Darnold and Geno on the same level is so like, oh, because look what Darnold's doing, and he's trying to understand like, well, what are the contracts going to be? How do we view Geno relative to Darnold? There is commentary in how O'Connell is scheming. It's a play action heavy offense. Give Darnold as little to think about as possible offense. It's the inverse in Seattle. It's the absolute inverse. Now, Darnold is, in my opinion, he's a good quarterback. Give him credit. He's doing, again, like he can be even better next year, right? If they keep him, he can continue to develop, but there are guardrails in the offense. There are no guardrails in this offense. It's Geno's the shit. I'm scheming like he's the shit, but I'm also scheming like his O-line isn't shit on top of it. So it's just like, let's not make a false equivalence there, because it's the circumstances are way different in Minnesota versus Seattle. In every regard, in my opinion, almost every regard.
Yeah. And Darnold almost had an appalling pick that we can talk about in a second. But finally on the let me just deal with these donations because they're Geno related. Fats, thank you. Geno taking the Browns to the Super Bowl next year. Heck, behind that offensive line, that would look fun. Is their offensive line still good?
I think they're a little banged up.
Yeah, and I don't know if has Stefanski still got it.
No, he does. I think he does.
Yeah. If you want to look at balance, I went on a Vikings podcast. I know they're not the Browns, but I went on the Vikings podcast midweek, as did you, Griff. But I was saying how envious I was of just the balance of O'Connell compared to what Seattle does, and how like easy it is on the quarterback.
Yeah. Also, so because it's easy on the quarterback, I think Darnold can easy-ish on the quarterback. Darnold can play with a lot of confidence. Like he's really,
he knows where he can take his chances.
It's a reminder of how talented he was, though. Like he was always an incredible raw talent.
Right.
Like, yeah. Anyway,
some people
fun to watch.
Right. Some people would say that's Jared Goff as well.
No. Darnold can throw the football. Darnold can actually sling it.
Yeah, like zip it. Okay.
And he's really pocket athletic, like extremely pocket. Like his issue has always been his feet. His feet get too wild. Like he relies on his athleticism in pocket too much. He's I said last year, you can't convince me that Kyle Shanahan couldn't do with Darnold what he's doing with Brock Purdy if you gave Darnold a full camp with the ones.
There you go.
It's just what O'Connell's doing with him.
There you go. Ball.
Anyway,
toot your own horn. That's fine.
Yeah.
You want to pat yourself on the back as well?
Let me just. Yeah.
Good man.
You know what? Good call, Griff.
Yeah, good call.
Good
call. We also have a donation from.
Also, you know who else, Matty? You know who else believes in Sam Darnold? Pete Carroll.
He did. That's true.
He knows quarterbacks.
He did. Although Drew Lock today needed Pete.
Yeah, that kind of throws a wrench in my.
It does. Well, no, because Pete decided not to pay him.
True. But I think Pete believed in Drew there for a second as well.
I think most of us. Good to see you again, Novosos. I think most of us are in alignment that Grubb's not the answer moving forward. I'd love to begin hearing your analysis and thoughts on legitimate offensive coordinator candidates for this offseason. Who, why, etc. Unfortunate Miami won today.
Yeah, so that probably So let's. Are we just diving right into offensive coordinator shopping?
Well, we've been paid $10 to.
Okay, we'll do. We appreciate that, Nervosis. So first, let's start with the names that we know they liked a lot last year, and then build out of that. So those guys were Tanner Engstrand, Mike Kafka, Frank Smith, and Arthur Smith. I think Arthur Smith was their favorite. That's not possible now, right?
Well, I don't know. He might just be like, you know what? I've done Pittsburgh, completed it.
just
I
hop
want to work.
around.
I want to work with a better quarterback.
Just go from team to team being an OC. No, he should be a head coach again. Anyway, so the Arthur Smith is out of the picture. Tanner Engstrand is probably out of the picture because Ben Johnson is likely to get the head coaching job, and then Engstrand will inherit the Lions roster. I think that's what he would want anyway. So that puts you back with Kafka and Frank Smith, but I don't know what the vibe is on Kafka anymore with how bad the Giants are. I don't really blame the coaching staff, including Dable, because they have no talent. I don't know. That kind of dampens me a little bit. Also, Kafka and Dable will probably be competing with each other for OC jobs as well. Is Dable secretly good? I have a friend whose opinion I respect a lot, and he swears by Dable. Seth Galina for PFF. He likes Dable a lot.
Oh, nice, cool friend there.
Our friend, sorry.
No, you have a friend. That's cool. I'm happy for you. I'm not jealous.
Don't worry, Matty. You're still look. It's still the Matty F Brown show, and
that's right.
I would co-host with nobody other than with the host of the Matty F Brown show. But so I think the list is probably Kafka, Frank Smith, Dable, and then if they liked Arthur Smith, his number 2, Tom Arth, the quarterback coach, and he has some.
Sorry. Tom Arth.
Tom Arth, yeah. Why? What?
His surname is Arth.
Yeah, Tom Arth and Arthur Smith.
That's very good.
And then I think you probably have to think about O'Connell's number 2, Wes Phillips.
Yeah, and he was, of course, the Rams tight end coach.
Right, the Rams tight end coach. He also, I mean, I don't know what the deal is with him really. I hope he's not one of the Shanahan guys that when he gets to get his own job as the main decision maker, he doesn't just spam play action and then it works great, but then he has no counterpunch, which is what Slowick was, which is what Clint Kubiak pretty much is in New Orleans. Just an obscene amount of play action, defenses adjust, and then he doesn't really have anything in the drop back game. It's like fake balance almost. It's not sustainable. I put together a list. There's some other names. Another guy that we should think about because he's not calling plays is Ken Dorsey with the Browns. He got fired from Buffalo, and he was totally scapegoated. Like their offense isn't better.
Yeah, there was a lot of analysis about how he was passing. People said it was too much, and they weren't running the ball enough.
Like nothing fucking changed. It was all bullshit.
Right.
Like I think it was just interpersonal relationships breaking.
Right. And Dable was pressed because wasn't that around the time that article came out where it claimed he'd been using 9/11 as a motivational strategy?
You mean McDermott? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Did I just slander? Did I just slander the wrong coach?
That thing about McDermott is so funny. NFL coaches are insane. They're an insane class of people. Like they're not mentally well.
Well, I remember was it the Jeff Fisher one where he was showing like animals just fighting in the wild, like rams rutting to his players.
Yeah, that's so funny. Yeah, NFL coaches are hilarious, man. But so Kafka, Dable, Arth, Wes Phillips,
and
maybe Dorsey,
and Griff. I think
sorry, I'm going to cut you off. Sorry.
Oh, I was going to make a really succinct point.
No, you will in just a second. Shane Steichen might get fired. I would be all over that personally.
Steichen
or Steichen?
No, I'm fine with the pronunciation, but you'd be okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. I quite like the idea of getting a head coach who's been fired because they're not immediately going to leave again to be a head coach.
Right.
So you're like guaranteed them for like the next 2 or 3 years, you'd hope. unless they're
Yeah.
fired for being an asshole, which then is obviously not ideal.
I'm very much into the idea of a quote unquote retread for a lot of reasons. One, like what you said, you might be able to keep him around for longer, but also I think they need someone with the experience. Like that was another reason why I wanted Arthur Smith, was having someone with head coaching experience to kind of help out, Macdonald a little bit. Just knowing how the day-to-day operations are like gets you off the ground. Liam says Frank Reich. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he wants to coach anymore, but if he wants to OC, I'd be cool with that. Which for the same reasons I'd want Steichen, because they run the same stuff. They are the same. Mookie says, why would Steichen get fired? Yeah, maybe I'm wrong on that. I just know that there was heat there for a little bit. Maybe that's no longer true.
My thoughts.
Yeah, what do you think, Matty? God, I've been ranting.
I'd like an offensive coordinator who can run the football effectively and layer off the run action. I'm not talking running like crazy, but have a bit more balance.
Same, but out of both shotgun and under center.
Yes. I'd like Dave Canales.
Yeah, I mean, honestly,
have you seen what he's doing? It's incredible,
dude. He's cool, man. You might need to think about like who's his passing game coordinator, but I think that's I don't think that.
Did you have a run game coordinator?
Probably.
Anyway,
yeah, their run game is good.
But I think
Nate Carroll. I know Nate Carroll's on staff.
Go get Nate. Bring him home.
Oh my God, that would be so good.
But like this discussion, what it highlights, and thank you for the donation, Navosos, is to me, it's what we knew going in, hiring a defensive head coach in Macdonald, but getting a good OC is quite difficult, particularly if it's a first-time young defensive head coach, because how involved Macdonald's been this season in terms of like a CEO approach, I think is fairly limited. Obviously, he has Leslie Frazier looking around corners in Macdonald's words. But Frazier, again, is a defensive guy. Obviously, he knows NFL football, but how much like... And there is evidence that there's had some say. We don't know for sure, but like I said, the run rates, what we spoke about earlier, the formation stuff, all that thing, where Macdonald clearly has some instruction for his offensive coordinator, as any head coach would, but this isn't where he has a clear, or at least we don't know it yet, other than saying he wants the offense to be physical. We don't really know, and in what he thinks of defense in terms of the broad spectrum of lots of different concepts, a relatively small amount of concepts dressed up in a multiple amount of ways, simple multiplicity, that type of stuff. We don't really know what he wants from an offense, but also I would suggest that he's not as involved with the offense as Pete Carroll was, and I'd also suggest, contrary to perhaps lazy narratives, that Pete's involvement in the Seahawks offense was predominantly very, very positive, and really helped his offensive coordinators be better versions of themselves. And for Macdonald, that may come in time. It may come in the second season, or maybe he'll feel the need to, I don't know, hire a guy who can be more involved with the offensive side as well, as like a senior coach. I don't know, but this is, Griff, the challenge of a defensive head coach, right? Who's young, and it's his first rodeo and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, definitely. It's it was always going to be a I don't know what you want to call it, dampener. The first season, it just wasn't the right combination of OC and head coach, essentially. Dude,
Brian Schottenheimer would be.
I'm not against that, dude. Shoddy can get a run game out of. What am I saying here? He can get a run pass balance out of any personnel package combination formation world you want to live in. Essentially what that means is he can play action out of anything because he knows the right runs there. He can do it with different run pass rates as well. When Russell Wilson regressed heavily in the second half of 2020, you know what didn't regress? Their play action numbers. It did a little bit, but not. And they were passing all over the place that season. So like, and which is to say they didn't run very much, and yet they still had a good play action game.
Which also speaks to how different those buckets are, right? If you're doing play action right, it's a totally different world in terms of it doesn't need to regress if the rest of everything else is regressing, right? Okay. I'd be in favor of that. I don't think that will happen.
No, they're not bringing anyone back that we already know. You know who's going to be the driver of that sentiment is ownership. It's not. I don't think John would be against it. I don't think Mike would be against it. But anyway,
Doug Peterson, Griff.
Yeah, but the thing is that Riq is the better version of Peterson, and Steichen is just the new Riq. So they all come from the same tree. They've all cross-pollinated a little bit, and it's like he doesn't. What's interesting about Riq and by extension Steichen, with maybe the exception of this year, no matter who their quarterback is, they have good third down numbers. They scheme it up. So
interesting.
I don't know.
Okay. DK. Let's talk about DK Metcalf, Mookie, editor at Field Goals. Check them out. It's a quite well-known website. But what's the plan for DK Metcalf in 2025? Play out his contract, trade him for another receiver, trade him and sign a receiver, extend him, because I no longer think it's a clear-cut answer. And why Mookie's asking that question is DK in this game, there's the game-ending pick. There's the almost pick where Sanchez, I think, did a good job of criticizing DK for how he ran that route. There's been a number of weird not being on the same page, or DK drifting his route, or not running the route in the way that Geno expects. For whatever the reason, whatever the symptom is for that, it's happening this year particularly. There was the dropped slant one-on-one where it's like a play catered for him, play that they wanted him to make, and he just doesn't reel it in. But then there's also him winning vertically on a fade for a touchdown versus a corner trying to get into off coverage after disguising, and it's perfect and it's beautiful. So Griff, I don't know if we need to answer those questions from Mookie right now, but yeah, what did you make of DK today? Because I find it, again, a bit frustrating, but I also think, as we spoke about that pick already, but there is some empathy that needs to be exercised there, and there's clearly more going on than just DK being a bad player. I don't think he's a bad player at all.
Yeah, the only play from DK that really irked me was the one where he just lost on that press short fade to Shaquille. Like, I don't know why he tried to work inside anyway against cover two. I think it was cover two. And Griffin had a heavy reroute carry cloud technique. I think I might need to look at it again. I might be wrong. I just remember the safety jetting over. It looked like he was playing a cover two shell. There's no way that route would work with an inside release. And he spent so much time trying to get off of it. And Geno's trusting him. It's a timing throw. He gets off of those all the time. And so it almost resulted in the near interception. So that was just unfortunate. That was the only one that really bothered me. DK this year is having one of his worst seasons from an advanced statistics standpoint. I don't believe that he is playing any better or worse than he always has, though. So the reason for those numbers, and likewise, those numbers belong to Geno as well, because it's Geno's numbers when targeting DK as well, right? But I think it's attributable to how he's being used. So So if you were to airdrop current Geno into 2020, he puts up the same numbers. If you airdrop 2020 or 2020 DK into 2024, he puts up the same numbers he's having this year with the way he's being used. And what I mean by that is, well, the number one thing you need to leverage against the defense is the fade, right? The go ball. And corners know that, so they play a lot of off coverage against him, whether cover 3, cover 1, cover 4, or he gets clouded a lot. There are ways to punish teams that do that. You simply take the slants and the hitches. But DK is on pace for, on a per game, per snap basis, on pace for both running and receiving the fewest digs and hitches when aligned as the number one receiver. They are not. There's a seesaw between the fade and the slant with DK. And when the corner defends one, you throw the seesaw, tilts, and you throw the other one, right? They don't have that going, and that from that relationship between the slant and the go or the fade, same thing for the purpose of this discussion. From that relationship opens up the rest of DK's route tree. DK doesn't run dig routes well against press man or a corner that has to respect the fade, but he can run them fine when they yield it to him. But the scheme isn't such that the offensive coordinator is leveraging those threats, those assumptions against the corners. So essentially, the corners know what's going to happen, and you aren't getting everything out of DK then. So it doesn't matter like how well he can or can't run the routes that he runs. He's negatively impacted by essentially the predictability factor. He needs to spend more time on the outside. 35% of his snaps are coming in the slot. It was 22 last year. It's just he's not being optimized. And there's also I also am starting to wonder that maybe that's why Tyler isn't getting the looks he gets too, because Tyler could kind of feed off of how they defended DK last year with some of the possession stuff. So kind of like Tyler's kind of getting, like we talk about DK drawing coverage. He's actually not drawing coverage as much this year because they don't need to double him as much because they know what his route tree is. A lot of Tyler's isolation last year, the high volume of it, like his success rate was through the roof last year. The percentage of Tyler's receptions that went for first down were nuts, especially on third down. He can't get those one-on-ones as much. And I'm starting to think because I watched Tyler's tape, I don't think he's any different than he was last year. I think that there's
I agree. Strongly agree.
I know, he's winning on routes.
And in today as well, that it's just a kind of a glimpse of what that could look like. You're talking about the isolation stuff. Okay, didn't catch the ball, but he draws holding one-on-one with a pressed up.
So everything stems from there's a bad cascade effect of how Grubb is constructing the entire overarching premise of his offense. It's affecting DK, which affects this, which affects that. You need to run the ball more in shotgun, and you need to play action more in shotgun, and you need to vary the play calls you call off of certain formations. And then when you go into under center, you need to run less, and then you also need to run differently when you do run, and then you need to play action differently when you do call play action. It's just, dude, it doesn't matter what the lines are downfield. You're screwing yourself over with how you're structuring yourself. So
yeah, so that basically the whole DK discussion led into more criticism of Ryan Grubb.
You might say it's all connected.
Fats with a donation saying, DK, thank you, Fats. DK is a warrior. I think a bunch of great players have had uncharacteristically bad games this year, and I again blame coaching. Fats also with a donation saying, why does it feel lazy to me to hire some great OCs underling? I just don't believe in it. Yeah, I guess it is kind of lazy, but then how do you find the next OC who's good? Everything's a tree. Right, Griff. Are you done with the offense?
Yeah. Wow, we haven't talked about the defense, have we?
No.
Let me
start.
Let me get my laptop charger.
Shambolic. Absolutely shambolic.
Classic maneuver.
How are we doing, chat? look at the wide angle. You see the W. Remember W's? Remember how that used to be? Right. This is a bad time for me to need to clear my throat. Oh dear. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. I'm just catching up with what you're all saying. The defense, I think there's a couple of misunderstandings on it, which I've seen, as can happen on Twitter. It's interesting also just with the team, and like I understand why it happens, but and Mookie, that's a great question. We'll get into that. But it's so funny how people need a scapegoat or need someone to blame more than someone else. Like, and I think, you know, we have probably given Grubb a lot of the blame here on the offensive portion, so we're maybe guilty of it too. But ultimately, there's a lot of things that have happened in this game for it to have gone this wrong. It's an obvious statement, but I think it's worth repeating. Right, Griff. On the defense, this was an up and down performance where, as we've said, the Vikings were held to a fairly average thing for their standards. But then also Sam Darnold does have 246 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 picks. And Jefferson goes 10 for 144 receiving yards and 2 receiving touchdowns.
Yeah, what sticks out defensively is the run defense was pretty solid. Not that the Vikings are an elite running team, but they handled
3.4 yards per carry is nice.
Yeah,
or
they
3.7 for Jones. Yeah,
definitely. They handled outside zone and toss plays a lot better than they did against the Packers. Now the Packers are just really good at that, but I think that the D-line did a really good job of just working down the line, not getting reached, recovering if they do get reached a little bit. Honestly, just impressive from them. I'm excited to watch the tape and just be like, oh, hey, they're just good players playing well, you know. In the past game, I don't think their structure got nuked or anything. I think the corners just kind of were losing the battle a little bit. I mean,
because we did worry about the intermediate game and how play action and stuff would attack that. But the play action they seemed to hit seemed to be corners losing they were locked on and they lost.
Mm-hmm. And then maybe late stuff to the flat maybe, and it was just a rally issue. I think the one to Love, the touchdown Love gave up, that was the one play where I'm like, that did not need to happen. Love was, so it was cover 6. Love's playing cover 2, and his hips are pointed toward the 3 receiver side, which is not his responsibility. He's doing that because he's worried about the linebackers because they don't assign them matching.
Always trying to disguise.
Oh yeah, maybe it was that. Dude, Justin Jefferson though, just bail to the fucking end zone with Jefferson there.
He's the isolated receiver, right?
Yeah, he was by himself.
So we have a question on that from Mookie saying, on the second Jefferson touchdown, how much responsibility was on Riq Woolen versus Julian Love, given it was cover 2? Yeah, so as Griff said, it's cover 6, so they're playing cover 4 away from that side, and they're playing cover 2 to that side, as you correctly say, Mookie. And Woolen gets a good reroute on it. It's an okay reroute. You don't want to get flagged, obviously. And then he hinges well, and he's underneath the route. And he does fine, but then he sort of slows down. He had carried the route for 20 yards.
Yeah.
But he really needs to play high to low still because it's Justin Jefferson. You're on the single side. I imagine there's probably a route underneath that has bothered him a bit. Maybe the back came out, or there's a shallow crosser which has held him there. Because otherwise I can't explain why he did what he did.
Well, also, what you said, but then Darnold had been taking off a little bit that game too.
And yeah, it will have been Darnold's way of moving up in the pocket, which will also have held him. And ultimately, whether Woolen should have been underneath the route. Maybe it's a bit weird how he slowed down. There's probably 2 good reasons for that, which is the route and Darnold. But Julian Love has to get over that. He's the deep half player to a single receiver. He got an outside release. He got a reroute. He just was way too shallow and way too narrow. And it's for the reasons Griff described, along with just yeah, it's just a bad play, and Jefferson ran his route perfectly in how he attacked and drove and bent that. Macdonald described it as a 7 cut because it was run so much to that kind of corner away from the half safety. But it's a great hole shot and an unbelievable throw and catch from Darnold. At the same time, Love was caught way too middle and way too shallow. And as a deep half player to a single receiver, particularly Justin Jefferson, the danger man, that cannot happen. And the safeties have been playing around with like their deep half disguise and how deep they are and how wide they get and where they look based on the quarterback. And a big part of Macdonald's praise in Baltimore was how he coached them to be efficient with their movement, like the safeties, and not cover the stuff they don't need to cover, and sort of cheat back to stuff. And I'm not saying that's what happened here, but I do think that was a case of maybe that going wrong. So it's just from a defensive perspective, Macdonald's called that in to double Jefferson, and they didn't have much underneath presence, but ultimately it was thrown way over. Like, even if Woolen's underneath that, it's still caught because of how the placement was and how Jefferson had widened away from the deep presence, which was Love. So if you have to, if you're obsessed with apportioning blame here, it's not on Woolen. It's on Love, but it just sucks that they did that. Yeah,
it sucks. I do though. Like Love, I think that was a really bad play for him. I think he played a solid game otherwise. That one 3rd and 3 where they're showing quarters and then he buzzes down and they're playing weak buzz. And there's that dig route. Love did a really good job playing that route. Maybe he's feeling himself a little bit. He was disguising, pushing toward the trip side, but then he knew he was like coming back toward it to kind of bait Darnold a little bit. And he forced a back shoulder, back hip throw. And it was pretty much uncatchable for Hawkinson. That was impressive. So Love is,
Connor says, and this is the point, just watch the play back and the running back was starting to leak out to the flat as Darnold was also threatening to run. Woolen may have saw that. I'm sure he did. He's probably thinking it's time to start rallying for the check down, and he's just done it at kind of the wrong moment. But ultimately, it's more on Love. Right, so that wasn't the only play where the defense shot themselves in the foot, Griff. That was a big one, but on the field goal drive, they had a number of opportunities where the game was 17-17, right? There was where did the face mask happen? That wasn't the field goal drive. It was the touchdown drive. Yeah, so the play before the touchdown, Darnold sacked, and you're like, whoa, Byron Murphy getting involved in defense. What a monumental moment. It would have brought up probably 3rd and a mile from Minnesota's 30-ish. And instead, it put the ball 1st and 10 at Seattle's 39-yard line. I mean, that's how close Seattle was in this game, really. At that point, they were up 24-20. That sack would have kind of almost ended the game.
Yeah.
And that meant a lot. Was that also the same drive where Ernest Jones dropped a pick? Or he didn't really drop it, but it
would have been a tough play, right? Yeah. I can't remember, man. It all blurs together. I don't know how some people can watch the game and like remember exactly like the chronology of it. I can't do that.
Finn saying yes.
Props to the people that can.
But like ultimately the defense, and again, not to toot our own horn, right? But that Ernest Jones play or like the sack, these are plays that when they had back-to-back weeks of pick sixes, right? Where like the defense is playing really well, but against a better opponent, but also a playoff style opponent, but also just in any given week in the NFL, this is not sustainable. The offense has to step up, I mean, I'm not too disheartened by the defense. I'm actually encouraged. Again, Macdonald adapted well. It's very unfortunate that touchdown happened. And I think it's bizarre because maybe before this season we thought keep upgrading the D-line. Linebacker's a problem. They've been aggressive at linebacker. I still think getting a maybe Tyrese Knight could be upgraded. Maybe you could get a real star mic. That would be awesome, like a fast mic. But ultimately, Griff, where I'm going with this is the DB room now is like the big question mark. So Riq Woolen this game started benched for the opening series. Macdonald described it afterwards in his post-game presser, because I did wonder if that was after his performances, but he said it was a team rules thing.
He was out. He was out at the club, man. I think there was that rumor that he was partaking.
Someone replied to my tweet saying he had been out clubbing the night before. We don't know if that's true.
It's hearsay. I don't know. But it is funny that rumor came out and then he gets benched.
I hadn't seen the rumor beforehand. That's funny.
Yeah. Anyway, so it's up in the air with him, right? Long term. What does that mean? I think that Love, they might try to. Well, what's Love's contract?
They love, they love Love, but they do really like Love. Like he's the defensive leader on the back end, and kind of a big instiller of Macdonald's culture and the growing stuff there. I think he's the guy they'll. If they're going to build around two people, it'll be Love and Witherspoon. But right now, I'd say the rest of them are probably going to get upgraded on or heavily competed with.
Yeah. It's very much a case of, Macdonald maximizing a player like that coming with him when you hired him. Like that's definitely applying for Love, and it's cool to see. He definitely deserves to stick around as long as he can in Seattle. So,
yeah.
And Leslie Frazier, I mean, he called his shot. He's like, he's going to become a household name. Like Love deserves to be, a Pro Bowler this year.
Yeah. Leslie Frazier also had very high hopes for Riq Woolen, and clearly the coaching staff is still trying to fully reach him. But I think some people have misinterpreted that touchdown, though. Like, I've seen people blaming Woolen for that, and I understand it looks a bit funky, but it's not him.
Yeah, and like with regard to Love, like, and people know that I was really critical of him last year. I think we both were, and I still kind of stand by how I thought he played last year. I don't think he was very good last year, but I think he's been really good this year. Even within that, like, good players are like, they're allowed to make a bad play. It doesn't redefine. You can go find Earl Thomas giving up a post in 2012. Like, it's there.
Especially when, like, that Darnold stepping up under pressure, and then the Jefferson route and the connection was a special play from them too. It wasn't a half bad play.
Yeah.
Right.
In Woolen's case, really quick, it's frustrating because we want him to be a top 10 corner. And I think that he's never going to be that. He might have a season where he has 8 picks, whatever. But I think he's always going to be in that 12 to 20 range. And us, John Schneider, have to just decide, is that worth what he's going to be eventually command?
I think what's frustrating about the Woolen thing as well is it doesn't appear to be all of the plays right now seem to be from like focus or like not from a outside sat on the sofa or couch, as you guys would say, perspective. Almost like a lack of application, and you hear like a rumor that, you hear that he's broke a team rule. You hear this rumor that he's been to a nightclub before a game. Like, that's just you're like, wow, you could be even more locked in. You could be even better than you are, and you're within a real inch of doing it. Or
it's never going to change.
Or maybe he needs a coffee, but some guys just aren't wired in a certain way, and that is ultimately the difference between being a top.
All right, so I said that's never going to change. I take that back, because no, he's 25. I was gonna make a joke about the frontal lobe not fully reattaching it. Look, you have to ask yourself, like, are you willing to sign up for the good and the bad? Like, is that worth it to you? To me, the frustrating plays will be frustrating, but I'm kind of okay with that in the aggregate, personally.
Yeah, it depends how much he gets paid.
Yeah.
We've dealt with this at the start of the season, and we're saying very similar stuff now. Really,
I'm okay with Riq Woolen being the fucking 14th best corner in the league every year. I'm okay with that.
But like, also for me, he's not the reason they lost this game. Like,
no, he's not.
And I'm seeing stuff like that, which is crazy.
Is the only game where he was like, wow, if Woolen played better, they would have won, is really the Rams game.
Yeah.
I mean,
he had some really good pass breakups in this game too, like, and some really good passes defensed.
I still don't understand how well he defends the play action race route. It's insane to me.
Yeah, his issue still really for me is zone, like pure zone.
Yeah, definitely.
Like the touchdown.
Definitely. Like some of those comebacks that Jefferson caught on him, what's going to happen, dude? Like, it's the NFL.
Yeah, he's defending every part of the route tree there. Like, he's tight within that. It's just a beta.
Yeah.
But like, in cover 2, if you're carrying a route 22 yards deep as the flat defender, and you've got a good reroute and you funneled it to your inside, there's only so much you can do. Like, even if Woolen had kept sinking underneath Jefferson, it's still getting caught because of Love's positioning. That's kind of the point I want to make, along with the fact that he would have been responsible if Darnold had broke contain on that side of the pocket, which he was about to do. And he would have been responsible for rallying to the check down, which from an empathy standpoint, right? Like, we were empathetic with DK Metcalf and his mistake, right? And I don't even know if you can call this a mistake from Woolen, because he's in an extreme conflict there. But from an empathy standpoint as well, the previous week, him not rallying to a check down well enough had been a point of like contention for Julian Love out on the field, and I'm sure something they'd highlighted in their film meetings. So anyway, it's difficult playing in the NFL. I think that's about it, really. It's just funny that... Oh, Trey Brown lining up offsides on 3rd and 8, which was like a 4-point addition. It would have been a 3rd and 8 sack. Instead, it was 3rd and 3, and Jefferson caught the touchdown on Trey Brown, pressed up in 1-on-1, which is difficult for... is very, very difficult for Brown to obviously cover. I was surprised they hadn't thrown to Jefferson previously when he was 1-on-1, but they sure did on that play. And then he went off, as we've covered. But Brown lining up offsides, again, from an empathy standpoint, it's 3rd and 8. When a receiver's that far off the ball and you're in the moment, right, and you're just wanting to focus on how you're going to press technique that guy, and you're wanting to really make sure you get a good jam. I don't know what the coverage was, but you wanted to make sure you don't get a good jam and you don't get rubbed, because the Vikings are really good at that. And Brown was the press guy. And all he's done is take one step too far forward and not check with the line judge. But you have to think all of the things which are going on. Like, for a player in that situation, I think he was matched up on Jefferson too. He's probably expecting like a shallow drag route, and so he's trying to get a head start on it, and he's just taking it too far. And yeah, it sucks, but people saying, oh, they've never seen a player do that before, or what was he thinking? Well, that's what he was thinking. Like, it's just a mistake. But the mistake is very well intentioned. Like, he's not being a dick. Like, he's trying to make a good play for his team.
Right.
What is interesting though, Griff, and this transitions us. Are you done with the defense?
One little additional thing with regard to stuff like that, and like, judging this player and that player. If we watched 17 games of another team, like, there's every team has this, has things like that going on.
Right. And even like, if you go back and watch the Legion of Boom, like, there's plays where like the best players the Seahawks have ever seen at their position are making terrible mistakes, but for whatever reason it doesn't get exposed. Michael
Bennett's, neutral zone infractions. Like,
yeah, well, people noticed that, but yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so.
Okay, so that kind of is nicely transitioning, Griff, to... It's funny how, with all that change, like an entirely new coaching staff, a lot of these players are still doing fairly similar things, positive and negative. Like, they are who they kind of are.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to finish on the thought that John Schneider, in his first press conference without Pete Carroll, said, "We're all here today because we underachieved in 2023. We all did." He then went on to say about his team, "I think it's a young, talented team that feel like they're right on the cusp being close to a Super Bowl." Griff, the Seahawks right now are 8-7. They have to go on the road to the Bears, traveling during Christmas, and it has to snow. It wouldn't be Christmas if it doesn't snow. It wouldn't be Chicago if it doesn't snow. It wouldn't be bear weather. And then they have to go on the road to the Rams, who will be fighting, you would think, for NFC seeding, playoff position, postseason football. Whereas the Seahawks, by that point, if the Rams beat the Cardinals in the previous week, will be fighting for nothing but incentives and pride. They could go 9-8 again. Do you have any thoughts on that, given the context of Schneider's comments, given the clear expectations from not just Schneider, but obviously ownership? How do you feel about this?
Well, it is funny because, look, it is ironic, right? But at the same time, Schneider kind of had to say that to signal to ownership, like, we have higher standards. Like, what is he supposed to say?
And he's setting the tone for a new era. Like, you don't go.
I think what's best for the organization, including ownership, is, and the fans and everything, is just divorce completely from the old era, meaning stop comparing them, because you're setting yourself up for failure and you're forcing yourself to constantly call your shot. Just let the new group breathe and let them make decisions without like trying to chase the past and being better than the past or even the immediate past. Like, just build your team up. Like Macdonald doesn't give a shit what happened last year in Seattle. He doesn't give a fuck about the Seahawks going 9-8 last year. It means nothing to him. And he's the one making the biggest, most important decisions for the whole team. Even though he's not higher ranking than Schneider on paper, he's still the most important person in the building, just being the head coach. He doesn't care about any of that. The only people that cares about it is everyone else around him. But the most important person isn't thinking anything about the 2023 Seattle Seahawks. So like, I hope ownership is not centering that mindset. I hope Schneider isn't, because it's probably not good for him, like mentally trying to run a team. Like, it's not good for us, the fans. Anyway, but it is ironic though. He probably should have tried to have worded that convey what he wanted to convey in a different way. But
it's not been the best, off season for him in terms of his comments aging.
It's been rough. He should only trade. He should only make trades where you're only giving up like third or fourth round picks.
And just before like the season.
Mm-hmm. Funny stuff.
It is ironic, but ultimately I think, if they go 9-8, if they go 10-7, it's a good first year for Macdonald. And I think the big encouraging thing is he appears to be the same guy he was when he joined. He's handled himself pretty well. I will say, and it's completely understandable, this press conference, he seemed incredibly pissed, which is good. Like, why would you like losing? But yeah, I'm just interested. Like, what does it look like if they lose like another? Lose the next game or lose the next two? Like, how does he manage that? What is what's the messaging? But I think his messaging has been on point all year, and yeah, the defense has improved in certain aspects. Mookie made an interesting point in the chat saying the Seahawks rank 30th in total early down negative plays, no gain plays on defense, and 29th in negative no gain run plays, which speaks to the kind of bending nature of them and their inability to get splash plays on defense. And I think, yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
For me, the second year for Macdonald was always going to be, I think, like for everyone, the real big year. And ultimately, it's the offense which has to improve and does fall under his remit as a head coach. And it is performing way, way below their talent level right now. They've almost traded off the defensive gains, which I think by the end of a 17-game season, we will be less enthusiastic about than we would have been before these past 2 games. But they've traded that in defensive improvement off for an offense going from solid to average to appallingly bad.
Yeah.
From talent level to performance, in that ratio, they're probably the worst offense in the league.
That's fair. Adjusting for talent.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, dude, being one of the worst play action teams in the league after being one of the best play action teams in the league with the same players is a hard pill to swallow. It's a tough pill to swallow. Even if the drop back game was, actually the drop back game isn't that bad, but even if it was better, play action being this poor, man, that's to me kind of a deal breaker. It's just, and then also to not do it very much either. That's the other thing. They don't do it enough and they're bad at it. And it's not do they not do it very much because they're bad at it? It's probably the relationship's going in the other direction in terms of cause and effect. It's part of the reason why they're bad at it is because they don't do enough of it. They don't do enough of the right types of play actions. But it is funny. It's similar to 2022 and 2023 where with an even average defense, or even forget about pass defense, with even average run defense, you're talking about 2 to 4 more wins each of those seasons. And then they get that. But it's if they could have had the offense they had the previous season this year, you're talking about maybe competing for the second seed if they had the 23 offense this year. So it is kind of an ironic twist of fate there.
Delicious
irony.
Delicious chocolate cake. All right, let's handle the rest of these donations. People have been very kind tonight. So Nunya asked, was it cover 3 or cover 2? Thank you, Nunya. Yeah, so cover 2 on that side, cover 4 on the other side. Novosos, thank you again for the donation. Don't really know if we can talk about that, but anyway, thank you. Ben saying, thank you, Ben. Good to see you again. So if Pete got fired because the roster underperformed, is Grubb a big enough head to get rid of to satiate ownership's desire or someone else's? I think I would like to think that ownership would be okay with going 9-8 in the first year of a rookie head coach who's so young and had so much on his plate and improved the side of the ball he's responsible for, primarily. But yeah, I think Grubb is a big enough head. I hope, but I am concerned about misinterpretation, as I said at the start.
Yeah. I'm gonna suspect. So look, my thing is that ownership probably respects and abides Macdonald's opinion above anyone else in the building. Whatever he says, and they would abide, and they would allow him to kind of guide them a little bit. And if I had to guess, Macdonald is extremely pro Geno.
Well, today he said he thought he played a good game, but he also described him as their best competitor. He's very effusive in his praise.
Yeah. Grubb is going to, when Macdonald watches the tape today, this is my opinion, so it's going to be fan fiction, right? But if I had to imagine how I suspect Grubb would view the game through the lens of a defensive coordinator watching the tape of his offense, he's going to overemphasize in his own mind how well Geno handled the blitz from Flores and all the disguise and be just really wowed by that and think, can we just have a more stable structure? Because I really like what this quarterback is capable of from an operational standpoint. Anyway,
they have I agree with you. I think it could go the wrong way in terms of Grubb and what he takes from this. But I also think because Macdonald's been trying to work his defense this season, like when he does a deep dive after the season, and I'm sure he'll do it literally like the day after he needs to stop preparing like defense and like practice plan, right? Like the day after they're done, he'll just get into the offense and self-scouting that. But I think I don't know if how much of that he'll have had the chance to do like in season. He'll have done a bit, but not like a full deep dive. And I think he might tear his hair out at that point. And then, yeah. Anyway, it would be cool for someone to ask him on his ideas on like offensive football beyond like physicality.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, does he? I think we've talked about it a little bit, but does he even know what he thinks about offense yet? Because he's never really had to think about it in that depth before. So now he gets the time to actually arrive on what his offensive philosophy is, something that Pete had to take a while to arrive on too. Like he started talking about when you ask about him about offense, and he goes way back in his mind, he goes back to his time with the 49ers and the Bill Walsh offense. That's where he goes to. And he was there in the mid 90s after he had been the hotshot DC in the 80s and early 90s, got a one head coaching gig, got fired after a year. It wasn't until he comes to DC again, then he starts like what he thinks about offense kind of starts, at least what he decides to share, right? That's when you start to know, what does Pete actually like? Well, he likes a diverse drop back game, but in a way that helps the quarterback out, which is what Bill Walsh believed in, right? I mean, Bill Walsh is a quarterback guy, but he believes in making it easy on the guy at the same time.
Yep.
Ever since then, Pete has just hired the West Coast du jour, equivalent as it's evolved over the years. So Macdonald is I imagine Macdonald probably looks back at what Monken is doing in the passing game with Lamar, because that's his biggest frame of reference, probably.
It's not the Romans.
I don't think so, dude. No, I don't think so. I bet you I mean, there's some fusion there because Monken copied a little bit of what Roman did, what was already there in place. But that's the other thing. Who is Monken's passing game coordinator or number 2, whatever? I wonder if they hire from there. That would be interesting. I don't know if that guy's the right guy, but obviously you're not going to do in the run game with Geno what you would with Lamar, right? But it doesn't mean he's going to try to copy the offense. But
it was such a weird hire.
Dude, honestly, in hindsight, the Grubb hire was like he's who's left.
And he's a cool name.
Yeah.
He wants to stay in Seattle. He doesn't want to go to Alabama. He's available.
It really would have been worth taking the shot on Engstrand, not knowing if he was real or not.
Maybe he just didn't want to, because he knows that Detroit's his next year and he's in a good spot.
I heard from someone who is very clued in that Engstrand was really upset, not with Johnson, but upset with that Johnson didn't leave because he wanted to be an OC. So if he was that eager to be an OC, maybe he could have taken the job, but maybe he really wants the Detroit job. But Engstrand wants to be the guy. He feels like he's ready, is what this person told me. So anyway, not that that's surprising to hear.
Yeah. Okay. Fats, thank you again for another donation. Much appreciated. And Taker, that's right. The Jets couldn't. The Rams almost lost that game. It's crazy. And then Oliver, Merry Christmas to you too. I will visit Seattle. I have visited Seattle, but I will visit Seattle again. This isn't the year though. Maybe next year. Thanks, Oliver. Merry Christmas to everybody. Right. Griff, that was a good pod. It was a long one. Chat, please do like the video. It helps us out. Share it with people. Spread the word about Seattle Overload. Describe to them how unique our podcast is. Griff can be found on apps at CMike Spin Move. You can find me at Matty F Brown. Follow the pod at Seattle Overload on the app, which won't be named. to know when we're going live. We'll be back maybe... Well, they play a game Thursday, so I guess we'll be back on Thursday. Which in England we call Boxing Day. So there's a fun topic.
Boxing Day is a good little holiday.
Yeah, you know it well.
Yeah.
Monjombo saying, Matty, do you leave milk and cookies out for Santa or something else? Well, first of all, it's Father Christmas, so check yourself. And milk and cookies, no. We leave out a carrot. Father Christmas doesn't need the energy, you know. He just sits there.
Yeah.
Griff, this is a good off-season topic, maybe.
Yeah, it would be a good off-season topic.
That's wicked.
So it's a fun one.
Yeah.
It's so dependent on
A few
qualifiers.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right then. Do you want anything else?
Maddie, I think we should close out each podcast with some affirmations.
Okay.
I am successful. I am confident. I am powerful. I am strong. I am getting better and better every day. Hit it, Maddie. We're out of here. I am living with abundance. I am a living, breathing example of motivation. I am an unstoppable force of nature. I'm going to keep going.